everybody, Samantha White here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about composting. Now, composting is an activity that I have been doing for a couple of years, and it helps me avoid throwing food scraps into the garbage, which I really love, but I don't talk about it a lot because I don't find myself to be very good at it, and I also don't love the actual activity of composting. And so I don't really find that I'm gonna be a good go-to like expert. I'm not an expert. Oh my god, why would I say the word expert? And so if you're looking for a composting tutorial where people actually explain step by step how to compost correctly and make it work efficiently, don't watch this. I'm not a tutorial for you. I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm always just trying to learn more about it. I did want to finally do a video on composting though, because the way I compost is going to change really soon. So a composting pickup service just started in my area, and I signed up immediately. It's like 20 bucks a month, and they pick up your compost every week so that you don't have to deal with it. And I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I am really looking forward to having someone else do all my composting for me. But I recognize that not everyone has the option to take their compost somewhere, and for the last 2 years, I haven't had the option to take it anywhere. And so I wanted to talk to you about my experiences indoor composting. So for 2 years, I have lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend, and we have been composting indoors for almost that entire time. The first few months we didn't have a composting system, and we kind of thought that there would be a composting service in this area, but it turns out that there wasn't, so we had to find a solution for that. Now, we opted to go with a vermicomposting system, which means that we compost using worms. Which is very cool, but also kind of creeps people out sometimes. If that creeps you out, I just want to let you know they're very contained, and you don't even know they're in your house. Like, no one who comes to our house knows that we have worms in our apartment, unless I tell them, which I don't normally. So we have 2 composting bins. We have one in a closet that is right off of our living room. That was our first composting bin. We put it in the closet so it was out of the way and in a dark area that stayed relatively cool in the summer and relatively warm in the winter. When that one just wasn't working fast enough for us and we were creating more food scraps than we could fit in that single bin, we bought a second bin, and that one is sitting in our kitchen. Now, the first bin that we have, what is it called? I wrote down what the names of the bins are. The first bin that we bought, the one that we have in our closet, is called a worm cafe. Now, it comes with 3 individual bins in this whole system, and I think the theory is that by the time your 3rd bin on top is full, your one on the bottom should be completely composted, and you can take it somewhere and use that compost. Now, my experience with this bin has not been great. It works fine, but it only comes with the 3 bins, and by the time we're done with the 3rd bin, our first one doesn't seem to be fully broken down. So that was a slight issue for us, but that could just be because we aren't experts at composting, and I'm sure if someone who actually knew how to compost really well came in, they would be like, "Ooh, you're overfeeding your worms and you're not putting enough dirt or like water or carbon into it, so that's why it's not composting quickly enough." Anyway, we don't have that person, so we don't know. So that bin wasn't working fast enough. We bought a second bin. Our second bin has 5 trays in it. So the first one has 3 trays, the second one has 5 trays, but you can buy up to 7 or 8 trays for it, and that is called a worm factory. So the worm factory actually, we find, works a lot better for some reason. We haven't had as many issues with it not composting fast enough, though that could also be because we have 2 bins to split all of our food scraps between, and so we're not overfeeding either of them anymore. So that's our setup. That's what we currently have. We have a bin in a closet, we have a bin in a kitchen, and all of our food scraps go into there, and it seems to right now be working pretty decently. But we have had our share of problems. So I'm just going to talk a little bit now about the problems we have had so that you're aware if you want to buy a bin, because you can make your own compost bins that out of like a big tote and you drill holes in the bottom of it. I'm not 100% sure. There are tutorials online. My neighbors did it. They really liked it, and it was a lot cheaper than the bins that we bought. The bins that we bought cost somewhere around $100, and that's not cheap. That's a lot of money. That means that over the last 2 years, we've spent over $200 on just buying compost bins, and that doesn't include how much the worms cost, and that doesn't include like the time it takes to actually deal with these bins. But that is a decision we made. We chose to buy bins because we thought that that way there wouldn't be any human error in the actual making of the bin that causes them to not work. Yeah, that was the thought. We got the Worm Cafe. The Worm Cafe, it was fine. It works fine, but the legs are shit. The legs were unstable, and after a few months, it fell over, which is not cool. We came home and it had fallen over, and so we moved it on top of a like cabinet that we had. We happened to have a cabinet, and so we put it on top of that, and that seems to be working fine. So that was the main issue with our Worm Cafe. The legs were unstable, and it wasn't worth $100 because you couldn't actually just set it up and have it stand. You had to find a stand to put it on, and the entire bottom isn't flat, so that can be a little tricky. The Worm Factory does not have that issue. It is very sturdy. It comes with multiple bins. You can buy extra bins online, but the problem we've had with the Worm Factory is that it leaks. So with our Worm Cafe, we never had any problems with leaking. It has a spout on the bottom that you have to drain like every week, and that's easy. The Worm Factory also has a spout, but for some reason we've had it leak twice now. And so after the second leak, because it leaked all over our kitchen and we were like, this is gross, it wasn't great. So after the second bin leaked, we bought some screen, like that you would put on a screen door. We cut out a square of it and we put that screen into the bottom bin in our Worm Factory, because we figured out that the holes in between the like trays, so that the worms can get through all the trays. So like you have one tray at the bottom, as the worms are done with it, you want them to be able to move up to your second tray because that's where you're putting more food that you want them to eat. But those holes are so big that dirt was falling down through them into where the spout was that's supposed to just be catching extra water, and it was like clogging it. And so then the water level was rising up so far that it spilled over and would leak all over our kitchen. So we put a screen into the bottom tray, and that seems to have helped catch all of the dirt while still allowing the water to go through so that it's not leaking anymore, which is nice. So we solved that problem. Now, the last issues that I've had is dealing with the finished compost. So once I'm done and I have a whole bin of compost, it's pretty heavy in all reality, and then I have to find some place to take that compost. To solve that, I have bought a community garden plot, and I dump my compost into that community garden plot. So that's a big issue, and something I'm glad I don't have to deal with anymore with the curbside pickup, because it is a hassle to have to take your morning and get your compost all ready, get it into your car, and take it to your community garden plot, and then dig it into the ground there. I find it to be a hassle. And then the second thing that both bins I have an issue with is that you are supposed to use dirt in the compost bin. So you put in your food scraps, you put in your like cardboard, paper, whatever, so there's a mix of carbon and nitrogen, and then you're supposed to like cover it over with a layer of dirt every time. And where am I supposed to get dirt? Like, I guess I have to buy the dirt. Like, I don't have a yard that I can go out and just like dig up some dirt. So I've gotten some from my community garden plot, which is cool because, you know, that's like a twofer. But before I have the plot, or if it's winter, I have to have a supply of dirt coming from somewhere. So that's an issue for me as well. This was kind of a long, rambly video, and I recognize that, but I wanted to just sort of talk about the pros and cons of composting in your apartment. Now, obviously I did it for 2 years, so I think that the pros far outweigh the cons. I love being able to compost. I love not throwing away my food scraps. That is so important to me that I'm willing to compost in my apartment. And honestly, the bins are such a non-event the majority of the time, like you don't even know they're there, that it's really easy until you have to actually deal with the bins. So when you have to take bins out, or you have to add dirt and stuff in, or your bins fill up too quickly, that whole part of it, like actually dealing with the compost bins, is the part that is tiring. This is just my experience. I, again, am not an expert. I don't know what I'm doing when I compost, which is probably why I'm having so many of these problems. I'm gonna guess if someone who had been composting longer than me and really had done a lot more research into it were composting in their apartment, they would be able to do it more successfully and maybe have more tips to make it easier and more efficient. If you guys have any tips or tricks or resources or links for composting, please leave them in the comment section below. I would love for this video to really be a good resource for people who are thinking about composting in their apartment and want more tips on it. And I don't necessarily have those tips to give, but I bet a lot of you guys do. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're all having a great day. Bye.